and welcome back from atop the wall. My name is Mason Knopp, and we have another deck today. It's called Alela, the Artful Provocateur, Faerie, Antics, and Enchantments. It is just under $200. Keep in mind, these cards are not out yet, and the cards from Throne of Eldaron are not out yet, so that means that these cards are definitely way more expensive than they will be after release, just the following days after every price drops. So what are we doing with this deck? We are playing a bunch of enchantments and a bunch of artifacts and a bunch of cards that care about artifacts and care about enchantments. We are playing pretty much all of the good stuff in our colors in budget form. And let's start with some of our win conditions, the way that we want to win. We are playing Celestial Ancient as a way to put a +1/+1 counter on each of our big tokens that our commander produces every time that we play an artifact or an enchantment. We also got Etchings of the Chosen as a anthem effect. We got Intangible Virtue as another anthem effect. We have our Leyline of the Meek, another anthem effect, which is fantastic. I love all these things. And we also can get in with our commander with the All That Glitters. All That Glitters just gives it +1/+1 for each artifact enchantment in the deck. We have a lot. And keep in mind, some of our creatures are also artifacts or can find enchantments. So yes, there are quite a bit. We also have a couple of interesting cards. Because of how much I like toolbox decks, I have, of course, a tutor. One of the only ones that I could afford in a $200 deck, but it's a tutor. And we also have our Golden Wish. It's a wish card, and I love it because it counts technically as 10 other cards. It counts as finding Aegis of the Gods, which gives us hexproof. We have Ankh of Mishra, mess with our opponents that are being greedy and fetching all kinds of lands. Arcane Laboratory to fight through Storm, and the decks to try to go off in one turn. Brutal Effigy to exile a thing. Cranial Archive to just exile a graveyard, a little bit of graveyard hate. Favorable Winds, another anthem effect. Helm of the Gods, pump our commander for a Bujunch. A Planar Collapse, Sorcerer's Spyglass to fight against Planeswalkers that are not ours, and see our opponent's hand, and Suppression's Field to mess with our opponents, abusing like their abilities on their creatures or commanders. In addition to our ways to win, we have, let's see, where is our... Blind Obedience stops any kind of hasty creatures and nastiness and randomness from happening, coming at us, as well as gaining us some life if we choose to pay an extra for each card that we cast. We have Circle of Despair, which is like a really cheap force field, but we have to sacrifice a creature for it. We have our Ghostly Prison to keep things from attacking us. We got our Island Sanctuary. That helps actually protect us from a lot of things, which is awesome, and we have other ways to draw cards, which is sweet. We have Martyr's Call as a way to protect ourselves again using our tokens. We also got our Eidolon of Rhetoric, a good way to stop people from going off in one turn and to keep them from playing a bunch of stuff all at once. Now, we also have a bunch of removal in this deck. Turns out a lot of the good removal is very cheap. We have Attrition, Aura of Silence as a way to stack against artifacts and enchantments in the early game, then destroy some bigger ones later in the game. We have our Call to the Grave. We have our Detention Sphere, good old catch-all removal. We have our where is it? Imprisoned by the Moon, another kind of Detention Sphere effect, but only affects creatures, land, and planeswalkers. Turns it into literally the moon. We got Mind Slash to pick apart people's hands by sacking tokens. We got our Oath of Liliana, a good way to make everybody sacrifice a creature. It's sweet. Soul Snare goes really well and does a really well impression of our Swords to Plowshares. We got some counters. We got some 2-cost counters. All the good cheap ones that I have seen in French. We got Eldritch Reborn as both a way to gain some card advantage, help push us towards the winner's circle. Dispeller's Capsule and Executioner's Capsule. These act as a Dispel and a Doomblade together. We also got a couple of wrath spells. We got Hour of Reckoning and Sublime Exhaustion, Time Wipe to return our commander to our hand, kill everything else to restart it. And we also got a little bit of recursion with Dawn to Dusk, both being removal and recursion. And Hannah, Ship's Navigator, some of the cheapest recursion and best recursion in the deck that we could have in these colors. Now, for the only two planeswalkers we have, they're both Tezzerets. They care about artifacts. They were one of the cheaper planeswalker options, and they draw us cards. They draw us cards or they ramp us. I love it. They increase our artifact count and care about artifacts, and they make us draw cards or remove things. Fantastic. Other ways to gain card advantage may include Vampiric Rites, may include Search to Azcanta, Rhystic Remora, Monastery Siege. We have our hidden stockpiles. We have our good old Bident of Thassa's. Every time one of our creatures slaps another player, we get to draw a card for. We got Mask of Riddles. We got our Skull Clamp. We got Smuggler's Copter, or Looter Scooter, as it is also known as. Now, for some of the other cards in the deck that I wanted to mention Oath of Liliana. I wanted to mention the Mirror Maid, a great clone card from Throne of Eldraine. A great inclusion. Love this card. I love how Wizards been doing more copy things. This is a really good one. Love it for the game. And we have the Reconnaissance to give all of our creatures essentially vigilance. And I wanted to mention Zur the Enchanter. Although we are not specifically a Zur deck, we do have some ways to use Zur to help us do some really cool stuff and some really interesting things, help us remove a lot of stuff, and help us slingshot ourselves forward in the game. And some of our graveyard hate with Silent Gravestone, Neil Spellbomb, and the Cranial Archive in the sideboard to get with the Golden Wish. As for the Mana Rocks, the last part of the deck, Arcane Signet hasn't come out yet. Will probably be much, much cheaper than this. We got our Commander Sphere. We got different signets. We also have our Everflowing Chalice, Soul Ring, Soul Ring, Mind Stoned. Don't forget about all of our mirror. We got silver, lead, and gold mirror down here coming in hot. They are very strong ramp cards in our colors because they actually also produce as a Faerie. I tried to keep all the mana rocks down closer to 2 mana if possible, because I wanted to untap onto play this, go to turn 3, untap, play land per turn, and then have mana rock and 3 lands, enough to play our commander a turn early and just start dropping a bunch of enchantments and start actually playing the game and accelerating ourselves forward and keeping pace with everybody and doing all kinds of awesome stuff. The mana base for the deck involves all the artifact lands in our colors. We have our Arcane Sanctuary. We have our bounce lands. We have Command Tower. We have the gain lands from Khans. We have our cheaper fetch lands, of course, ways to affect our opponent's mana bases. Familiar Depths, dig a little bit. We have our untapped lands, the buddy lands, which are fantastic, very cheap, definitely awesome in our colors. Felt like this is a good way to include them and use a little bit of that budget. We have our Reliquary Tower. We have our Tectonic Edge to keep messing with our opponent's mana. We got all of the temple that we could have to help us scry, dig a little bit. And we have our Vivids, which are awesome, very cheap, help hold us over on mana until we can actually tutor for the mana that we actually want with Evolving Wilds. And that is the deck. And if you like this or you'd like to see anything else, leave me a comment below. And if you would actually like to make a copy of this deck for yourself on taptap.net, it is available. And yes, here is the maybe section of cards that I may or may not be putting in the non-budget version coming up tomorrow. And yes, I'm still working on the non-budget version. It is a work in progress. But for now, you can come on in for that face touch.